Captain Lee Min-jun stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Station, watching the massive alien ships appear on his screens. 12 enormous vessels dropped out of hyperspace, just outside Earth's solar system. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built. "Sir, they're requesting communication," said Lieutenant Park Jin-woo from his station. "Put them through," Lee replied, keeping his voice steady. In 50 years of contact with alien species, humanity had always been welcomed as peaceful traders and skilled engineers. This felt different. The main screen flickered to life, showing a tall creature with 4 arms and sharp teeth. Its skin was dark purple, and its eyes glowed red. Behind it stood representatives from 11 other alien species, all looking equally intimidating. "I am Supreme Commander Vextar of the Hegemony Coalition," the creature announced. "We represent the most powerful alliance in this galaxy. We have conquered 47 star systems and absorbed their populations into our empire." Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's chief xenobiologist, stepped forward beside Lee. She had studied alien cultures for decades and recognized several of the species on screen. All were known for their military strength. "We greet you in peace," Sarah said carefully. "What brings your coalition to our solar system?" Vexitar's mouth curved into what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Peace? How amusing. We come with an offer for your primitive species. Join our coalition willingly, and we will allow some of your people to serve us as workers. Refuse, and we will take your world by force and enslave every human." The bridge fell silent. Lee felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his expression calm. "You're asking us to surrender our freedom and our world?" "We are not asking," another alien stepped forward. This one looked like a giant insect with multiple eyes. "We are informing you of your options. Your species has been useful as merchants and builders, but you have no real military power. Your ships are slow and weak. Your weapons are outdated. You cannot resist us." Ambassador Kim Jae-won, who had been listening quietly, moved closer to the screen. "Perhaps we could discuss trade agreements instead. Humanity has always preferred cooperation to conflict." Several aliens laughed, making harsh sounds that hurt human ears. Vextar raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "Your cooperation was useful when you were simple traders," Vextar said. "But we no longer need traders. We need workers and soldiers. You will provide both, or you will provide nothing because you will be dead." Lee stepped forward. "And if we refuse?" "Then you die," Vextar said simply. "We have destroyed species far stronger than yours. Your people are soft. You spend your time helping other races instead of building weapons. You waste resources on art and music instead of warships. You are weak." General Park Soo-young, who had been reviewing tactical data, looked up from her console. "How much time are you giving us to consider?" 72 hours, Vextar replied. "After that, we begin orbital bombardment of your major cities. Surrender, and some of you live as our servants. Fight, and all of you die. Those are your only choices." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Lee looked around at his officers, seeing determination mixed with fear on their faces. "Sir," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "their ships have weapons that could destroy our cities from space. Our shields might hold for a while, but not forever," Lee finished. He activated the communication system to contact Earth's government. "This is Defense Station 1, requesting immediate conference with the Security Council." Within an hour, the world's leaders were connected in an emergency session. President Martinez of the Western Federation spoke first. "The aliens have made their position clear. They want complete surrender." "Their coalition has conquered dozens of worlds," reported Director Chen Wei from the Intelligence Service. "Every species that resisted them was either destroyed or enslaved. They have superior technology and overwhelming numbers." Prime Minister Nakamura from the Eastern Alliance reviewed the military reports. Our best warships combined couldn't match one of their vessels. They have 40 times our firepower. Lee listened to the discussions from his station. Through the window, he could see Earth in the distance, blue and peaceful. 50 years ago, when aliens first made contact, humanity had welcomed them with open arms. They had shared their culture, their art, their technology. They had built trade relationships and friendships across the galaxy. Now, those same peaceful qualities were being called weaknesses. "What about evacuation?" someone suggested. "We could send colony ships to distant systems." "They would hunt us down," General Park replied from her position on Earth. "They've done it before to other species. Running only delays the inevitable." Hours passed as leaders debated options. Some wanted to surrender to save lives. Others insisted on fighting despite the odds. The arguments grew heated as time ran short. Finally, Ambassador Kim spoke up. "We need to vote. The decision affects all of humanity." One by one, the representatives cast their votes. The result was unanimous, though some voices shook with fear. Humanity would not surrender its freedom. Lee opened a channel to the alien fleet. Vexitar's face appeared on screen again, looking amused. "Have you reached your decision, humans?" "We have," Lee replied firmly. "Humanity rejects your demands." "We will not surrender our world or our freedom." Vexitar's expression changed to surprise, then anger. "You choose death over servitude? How foolish! You cannot win this war." "Maybe not," Lee admitted, "but we won't live as slaves." "Then you will die as fools," Vexitar snarled. "We declare war on humanity. Your species ends now." The transmission cut off. Around Earth, defense systems powered up for the first time in decades. Ships moved to defensive positions. Citizens evacuated to underground shelters. Lee looked out at the stars, knowing that in a few hours, those same stars would light up with weapons fire. Humanity had chosen war over surrender. They had no idea what they had just awakened. The first attack came at dawn, Earth time. Coalition forces struck the mining colonies around Jupiter first, expecting easy victories against what they saw as defenseless workers. Commander Yexnall led the assault force toward Europa Station. His ship carried enough firepower to destroy the mining platform in minutes. Intelligence reports said the humans had no military defenses there, only civilian miners and their families. "Target the main reactor," Yexnall ordered his weapons officer. "One shot should destroy the entire station." But as his ship moved into firing range, something unexpected happened. The mining platforms began moving, using their industrial thrusters to spread apart. Cargo ships that should have been fleeing instead turned toward his fleet. "Sir," his scanner operator reported, "those cargo vessels are accelerating directly at us." Yexnall laughed. "Desperate humans trying to ram us? Our shields will crush their pathetic ships." The first cargo ship struck his shield barrier and exploded. The blast was much larger than expected, filled with mining explosives that lit up space like a small star. More cargo ships followed, each one detonating against coalition vessels. "These humans are insane!" shouted his weapons officer as another explosion rocked their ship. "They're sacrificing themselves." On Europa Station, Captain Jin Hee-sun watched the battle through her command center's windows. She had ordered the cargo ships to load themselves with mining charges and ram the enemy fleet. 15 pilots had volunteered immediately, knowing they wouldn't survive. "All platforms, begin moving to new positions," she ordered. "Use the asteroid belt for cover." The coalition had expected to destroy fixed targets. Instead, they found themselves fighting mobile platforms that hid among rocks and used industrial equipment as weapons. Mining lasers cut through alien armor. Cargo nets tangled enemy fighters. Even the ore processors were turned into weapons, launching chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Near Mars, General Park Soo-young coordinated the defense of the Red Planet's colonies. Coalition forces approached with overwhelming firepower, but they had never fought an enemy like humanity. "They're used to fighting other military forces," Park explained to her officers during a brief pause in the battle. "They expect organized formations and standard tactics. We don't fight like that." Instead of meeting the aliens in space, human defenders waited. When coalition ships entered Mars orbit, they found empty cities and abandoned bases. Then the attacks began from underground tunnels and hidden bunkers. Human fighters would appear suddenly, strike hard, and vanish before the aliens could respond. They used the planet's dust storms to hide their movements. They turned civilian vehicles into mobile weapons platforms. Most importantly, they fought not just to win battles, but to protect every civilian they could. Dr. Sarah Chen studied the alien combat footage from her lab on Earth. What she saw worried the coalition commanders more than any weapon could. "Look at this pattern," she explained to the Defense Council. "When their ships take damage, they retreat to save themselves. When our ships take damage, they keep fighting to protect others. They don't understand that kind of thinking." The difference became clear during the Battle of Titan. Captain Lee Min-jun led a small defense fleet against a much larger coalition force. His ships were outnumbered 5-1, but they had something the aliens didn't expect. "All vessels, form protective formation around the civilian transports," Lee ordered. "We don't retreat until every civilian is safe." The aliens attacked with confidence, certain they would crush the human fleet quickly. But Lee's ships didn't fight like a normal military force. When one ship was damaged, others moved to protect it. When ammunition ran low, ships shared their supplies. When a vessel was about to be destroyed, its crew would ram it into enemy ships rather than surrender. Coalition Commander Thexvar watched in confusion as his superior force struggled against the humans. "Why don't they retreat when they're losing? Why do they keep fighting when the battle is hopeless?" His intelligence officer had no answer. In all their previous conquests, enemy forces had surrendered when defeat became obvious. These humans fought harder when things got worse. The battle around Jupiter lasted 3 days. The coalition won, but at a cost they hadn't expected. They lost 8 ships and hundreds of fighters to destroy mining platforms and cargo vessels. Worse, the humans had evacuated most of the civilians before the platforms were destroyed. On Mars, the fighting continued for weeks. Coalition forces controlled the orbital space, but they couldn't stop the human resistance on the surface. Every day brought new attacks, new tactics, new surprises. "They turn everything into a weapon," reported one frustrated coalition ground commander. "Their medical vehicles carry explosives. Their food trucks launch missiles. Their children throw rocks that somehow explode." But the real shock came when the coalition tried to capture prisoners. Human soldiers would fight to the death rather than be taken alive. When cornered, they would detonate grenades rather than surrender. This behavior confused alien forces who were used to enemies surrendering when defeated. Supreme Commander Vexitar reviewed the battle reports from his flagship, growing more irritated with each page. What should have been a quick victory was turning into a costly war. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. 12 vessels destroyed, 37 damaged, his aide reported nervously. "We estimate human losses at—" "I don't care about human losses," Vexitar roared. "I care about our losses. We were supposed to crush them in days, not fight them for weeks." The aide hesitated before continuing. "Sir, there's something else. Other species in the galaxy are watching this conflict. Some are questioning whether humans are really as weak as we claimed." Vexitar's eyes narrowed. The coalition's power depended on other species believing they were invincible. If humans continued to resist effectively, it might encourage others to rebel. "Send more ships," he ordered. "Bring the second and third fleets. We'll overwhelm them with numbers." But even as he gave the order, Vexitar felt something he had never experienced before in battle: doubt. These humans fought differently than any enemy he had faced. They fought not just with weapons, but with a determination that seemed impossible to break. On Earth, the defense forces prepared for the next wave of attacks. They had lost battles, but they had learned valuable lessons. The aliens were strong, but they could be hurt. They could be confused. Most importantly, they could be beaten. The real war was just beginning. The war had been raging for 6 months when the galaxy began to understand what humanity really was. What the Coalition had dismissed as weakness turned out to be something far more dangerous. Captain Lee Min-jun commanded the rescue fleet heading toward the Proxima system. Coalition forces had attacked the neutral trading station there, trapping thousands of civilians from dozens of different species. The logical military choice was to ignore them and focus on defending Earth. Lee made a different choice. "Sir, the rescue mission will put our ships at serious risk," warned his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kim Sang-ho. "We'll be outnumbered 3-1. "Those civilians didn't start this war," Lee replied. "We're not abandoning them." The Coalition commanders couldn't understand it. Humans kept risking their military assets to save people who weren't even their own species. They rescued alien civilians from burning stations. They shared medical supplies with enemy wounded. They treated prisoners with respect instead of torture. "It's a trick," insisted Commander Vextar during a strategy meeting. "They're trying to make us think they're compassionate to lower our guard." But intelligence reports told a different story. Human forces genuinely protected non-combatants, even when it cost them tactical advantages. They had turned several Coalition member species neutral just by treating their people with kindness during rescues. On the front lines, the effects were becoming obvious. The Zelthari, insectoid creatures who had joined the Coalition for protection, began questioning their alliance after humans saved a Zelthari colony ship from Coalition crossfire. "Why did the humans save our people?" asked Hive Queen Zixara during a secret communication with her advisors. "The Coalition told us humans were savage destroyers." The answer came from her rescued subjects. Human medics had treated Zelthari wounded with the same care they gave their own soldiers. Human ships had shared food supplies when the colony ship's stores were damaged. Most shocking of all, humans had asked for nothing in return. Dr. Sarah Chen was documenting these interactions from her research station near Earth. What she discovered changed how humanity approached the war. "They're not just confused by our tactics," she explained to the War Council. "They're confused by our values. Every species they've conquered before fought only for themselves. We're fighting for everyone." General Park Soo-young had been developing new strategies based on this insight. Instead of just resisting Coalition attacks, human forces began actively disrupting their conquest efforts across the galaxy. "Hit their supply lines," she ordered her fleet commanders. "But remember, capture enemy supplies intact and redistribute them to neutral worlds. Show the galaxy that we're not conquerors like the Coalition." The strategy worked better than anyone expected. Human raid fleets would strike Coalition convoys, capture their cargo, and then deliver food and medical supplies to worlds that were suffering under Coalition rule. Instead of making new enemies, these raids made new friends. The turning point came during the Battle of Kepler Station. Coalition forces were attacking a major trade hub that served as a neutral meeting place for 17 different species. The station's defenses were overwhelmed, and evacuation seemed impossible. Captain Lee arrived with a small human fleet just as the Coalition prepared to destroy the station. His 12 ships faced a Coalition battle group of 40 vessels. But Lee didn't hesitate. "All ships, maximum attack," he ordered. "Draw their fire away from the evacuation shuttles." What followed amazed observers throughout the galaxy. The human fleet didn't try to win an impossible battle. Instead, they fought to buy time, using their ships as shields to protect fleeing civilians. When human vessels were too damaged to continue fighting, their crews would ram them into coalition ships rather than let them fall into enemy hands. The evacuation shuttles escaped, carrying refugees from 16 different species to safety. Lee's fleet was destroyed, but not before taking down 21 coalition vessels and forcing the rest to retreat. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than any government could control it. Species that had remained neutral began secretly supporting human forces. Some coalition member races started questioning whether they were fighting on the right side. The Hegemony Coalition was losing more than battles. They were losing the narrative. Ambassador Kim Jae-won worked to take advantage of this shift. Using secure channels, he reached out to coalition member species with a simple message. Humanity didn't want to rule the galaxy, they wanted to free it. "We're not fighting to conquer you," he told representatives from the Vorthak Empire during a secret meeting. "We're fighting to end the age of conquest. Join us, and we'll help you build something better." The Vorthak had been forced into the coalition when their homeworld was threatened. They had never wanted to be conquerors. Within weeks, they secretly switched sides, providing human forces with coalition military codes and tactical information. Supreme Commander Vextar watched his alliance crumbling and responded with increased brutality. Coalition forces began targeting civilian populations directly, hoping to force human surrender through terror. The attacks had the opposite effect. Each atrocity committed by the coalition strengthened human resolve and drove more species to support the human cause. Humanity's response was swift and decisive. "No more defensive operations," General Park announced to her commanders. "We're taking the fight to them." Human fleets began appearing deep in coalition space, striking military targets with precision and skill that shocked enemy forces. But these weren't raids for destruction. They were rescue missions on a massive scale. Human forces would attack coalition prison worlds, free the enslaved populations, and escort them to safety in neutral space. They would strike coalition supply depots and redistribute the captured resources to worlds suffering under alien occupation. They would target coalition command centers and broadcast messages of hope to oppressed populations. The coalition had never faced an enemy like this. Previous opponents had fought to defend their own territory or to conquer new worlds. Humans fought to liberate everyone. "They're not trying to replace us," reported one coalition intelligence officer. "They're trying to end us completely." The realization sent panic through coalition leadership. They had built their power on fear and oppression. Humanity offered something the galaxy had never seen: freedom without conquest, protection without slavery, victory without revenge. As human fleets struck deeper into coalition space, more member species defected. The alliance that had once seemed unstoppable was falling apart from within. Vextar gathered his remaining loyal forces for a desperate counterattack. If he couldn't stop the humans through conventional warfare, he would strike at the heart of their power. He would attack Earth itself and show the galaxy that even humanity's homeworld could be destroyed. But as his fleet prepared for the assault, Vextar didn't realize that humanity had been preparing for this moment from the beginning. The real war was about to start, and this time, the coalition would learn what humans could do when they stopped holding back. The coalition's attack on Earth came with over 200 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled. Supreme Commander Vexatar was confident this massive force would finally crush human resistance and show the galaxy that the coalition remained supreme. He was wrong. As the coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, they found something impossible waiting for them. The system was filled with ships from dozens of different species, all flying alongside human vessels in a united defense fleet. "Sir," reported the coalition scanner officer, his voice shaking, "I'm reading Zelthari hive ships, Vorthak battlecruisers, Kellian destroyers, and at least 15 other species vessels. They're all working together." Vextar stared at the display in disbelief. "That's impossible. These species hate each other. They've been fighting border wars for centuries. But the evidence was clear. Species that had never cooperated before were now fighting side by side to protect humanity's homeworld. The humans had somehow accomplished what no government in galactic history had managed: true unity among different races. Captain Lee Min-jun, now promoted to admiral after his heroic actions at Kepler Station, commanded the defense fleet from the bridge of humanity's newest warship. The vessel had been built using technology shared freely by their new allies, combining the best engineering from dozens of worlds. "All vessels, this is Admiral Lee," he broadcast on the command frequency. "Remember, we're not just defending Earth today. We're defending the idea that different species can work together in peace." The battle began immediately, but it was unlike anything the coalition had experienced. The Allied fleet fought with perfect coordination, each species contributing their unique strengths to a unified strategy. Zelthari ships used their incredible speed to harass coalition flanks. Vorthak vessels employed their powerful shields to protect damaged allies. Kellian destroyers struck with surgical precision at coalition weak points. And human ships did what they did best. They adapted constantly, changing tactics faster than the enemy could respond. General Park Soo-young directed the orbital defense platforms from her command center on Earth. These weren't the simple defensive weapons the coalition expected. They were technological marvels created through interspecies cooperation, combining human ingenuity with alien expertise. "Target their command ship," she ordered. "But remember the rules of engagement. We disable, not destroy. Give their crews a chance to surrender." This approach confused coalition forces even more. Despite the massive attack on their homeworld, humans were still offering mercy to enemy soldiers. Many coalition ships, seeing their cause was hopeless, began surrendering rather than fighting to the death. Dr. Sarah Chen monitored the battle from her research station, but she was also coordinating something more important: the complete dismantling of the coalition's power structure. Intelligence networks that humanity had built with their new allies were striking simultaneously across the galaxy. "Reports coming in from 17 systems," she announced to the command center. "Coalition prison worlds are being liberated. Supply bases are being captured intact. Command centers are surrendering without firing a shot." The coalition wasn't just losing one battle. They were losing everywhere at once. Ambassador Kim Jae-won had spent months building the network that made this possible. Secret agreements with oppressed species, carefully planned uprisings, and most importantly, promises that humanity would help rebuild after the war was over. "This isn't conquest," he had explained to potential allies. "This is liberation. When the coalition falls, we're not going to rule you. We're going to help you rule yourselves." The promise was being kept in real time. As coalition forces were defeated on each world, human administrators helped establish local governments instead of occupying the territory. Resources were shared freely instead of being claimed as spoils of war. Back in Earth orbit, the coalition fleet was being systematically destroyed. But Supreme Commander Vextar had one desperate card left to play. "Activate the planet killer," he ordered his weapons officer. The massive device had been held in reserve for exactly this situation. One shot could crack a planet's crust and kill every living thing on the surface. If Vextar couldn't have victory, he would at least have revenge. The weapon charged slowly, its energy readings visible to every ship in the system. The Allied fleet immediately began converging on Vextar's flagship, but they would never reach it in time. Admiral Lee made a decision that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "All human ships, intercept course on the flagship, maximum ramming speed." "Sir," his tactical officer protested, "that's suicide. We'll never survive the collision." "Earth has billions of people," Lee replied calmly. "My life is a small price to pay for theirs." But before the human ships could complete their sacrifice, something unexpected happened. Coalition vessels throughout the fleet began firing on their own flagship. crews that had served the Coalition for years couldn't bring themselves to participate in planetary genocide. "What are you doing?" Vexitar screamed at his own officers as his ship came under fire from Coalition forces. "The right thing," replied Commander Thisica, a Coalition officer who had been questioning orders for months. "We joined the Coalition to bring order to the galaxy, not to destroy entire worlds." The flagship's shields collapsed under fire from its own fleet. The planet-killer weapon exploded harmlessly in space. Its energy dispersed safely away from Earth. With their supreme commander dead and their superweapon destroyed, the remaining Coalition forces surrendered. The war was effectively over, but the real work was just beginning. In the weeks that followed, humanity proved that their promises of freedom weren't just propaganda. Human fleets helped former Coalition worlds establish democratic governments. Human engineers shared technology freely to help rebuild damaged infrastructure. Human diplomats worked to resolve ancient conflicts between species that had been forced to fight each other under Coalition rule. Most importantly, humanity refused to take control of the territories they had liberated. Instead, they helped create a new galactic council where every species had an equal voice, regardless of their military power or economic strength. The galaxy had expected the war to end with one empire replacing another. Instead, it ended with the idea of empire itself being rejected. But while most of the Coalition had surrendered, a few die-hard leaders escaped with small fleets, still believing they could restore their power. Supreme Commander Vexitar was dead, but his philosophy lived on in those who refused to accept that the age of conquest was over. The final chapter of the war would determine whether the galaxy's new freedom could survive against those who still believed in rule through force. 3 months after the Coalition's defeat, the galaxy was rebuilding. Former enemy worlds were becoming peaceful trading partners. Ancient conflicts between species were being resolved through diplomacy instead of warfare. The new Galactic Council met regularly on a neutral space station, with representatives from over 60 different species working together. But peace was fragile, and there were still those who wanted to destroy it. Admiral Lee Min-jun stood in the council chambers, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Most were positive: trade routes reopening, colonies being rebuilt, former Coalition prisoners returning home. But some reports were troubling. 3 attacks this month on civilian transports, reported Captain Kim Dong-hyun from the Intelligence Division. All the ships were carrying supplies to former Coalition worlds. The attackers used military tactics and vanished before our response fleets could arrive. Dr. Sarah Chen pulled up tactical data on the main display. The attack patterns match Coalition training methods. Someone is trying to restart the war. The someone turned out to be General Krexnal, one of Vexitar's former lieutenants who had escaped during the final battle. He had gathered the most loyal Coalition remnants, about 50 ships and several thousand soldiers who refused to accept their defeat. Unlike Vexitar, who had been motivated by pride and power, Krexnal was driven by pure hatred. He blamed humanity for destroying everything he believed in, and he wanted revenge at any cost. "The humans think they've won," he told his followers during a secret meeting in an abandoned space station. "They think their mercy and cooperation make them strong. We'll show them that kindness is weakness, and the strong should rule the weak." His plan was simple and brutal: strike civilian targets throughout the galaxy, blame the attacks on human forces, and turn the new alliance against itself. If he couldn't rebuild the Coalition, he would at least destroy the peace that replaced it. The first major attack came during a celebration on Kelios Prime. The planet was hosting a festival marking the first anniversary of their liberation from Coalition rule. Representatives from dozens of species were attending, including Ambassador Kim Jae-won. Krexnal's forces struck during the main ceremony, targeting the civilian celebration with military weapons. Thousands were killed or injured in the first few minutes, but the attack failed to achieve its real goal. turning the victims against humanity. Instead of blaming humans for the violence, the survivors worked together to help each other. Human medical teams treated alien wounded. Alien security forces protected human civilians. The Festival of Peace became a demonstration of unity that was stronger than any military force. "This is not what was supposed to happen," Krexanal raged when he received reports of the aftermath. "They should be fighting each other, not helping each other." General Park Soo-young coordinated the response to Krexanal's terror campaign from her headquarters on Earth. But this wasn't a conventional military operation. The enemy was hiding among civilian populations, striking randomly and disappearing before counterattacks could be organized. "We need to think differently," she explained to her officers during a strategy meeting. "This isn't about superior firepower anymore. It's about protecting innocent people from fanatics who want to destroy everything we've built." The solution came from an unexpected source. The same cooperation networks that had defeated the coalition could be used to track down the remaining terrorists. Species that had once been enemies began sharing intelligence, coordinating patrols, and working together to protect their shared peace. Captain Lee Min-jun, now commander of the Joint Defense Fleet, led the hunt for Krexnal's base. The search took weeks, following clues across dozens of star systems. But they were helped by former coalition soldiers who had chosen peace over continued warfare. "He's using the old coalition base at Vega 7, reported Commander Thisaka, the former coalition officer who had helped end the war. "I served there under Vex Tar. I know the layout." The final battle was brief but decisive. Krexnal's followers were outnumbered and outgunned by the joint fleet, but more importantly, they were isolated. No species supported their cause. No worlds offered them shelter. They were the last remnants of an empire built on fear, facing an alliance built on hope. Krexanal himself was captured alive when his flagship surrendered after its weapons were disabled. Admiral Lee personally accepted his surrender, offering him the same mercy that had been extended to all coalition prisoners. "Why?" Krexanal asked bitterly as he was placed in detention. "Why show kindness to your enemies? Why not simply execute us and be done with it?" Lee considered the question carefully before answering. "Because that's not who we are. The coalition fell because it ruled through fear and hatred. If we respond to violence with more violence, we become what we fought against." Krexnal was placed on trial before the Galactic Council, with representatives from every species he had attacked serving as judges. The trial itself became a symbol of the new galaxy. Justice served through law and cooperation rather than revenge and retaliation. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, but even in prison, he was treated humanely. Some called it weakness, but most recognized it as strength, the strength to remain civilized even when facing those who rejected civilization. With the last coalition remnants defeated, the galaxy could finally focus on building rather than fighting. The peace that humanity had fought for was proving to be everything they had promised it would be. Ambassador Kim Jae-won stood before the Galactic Council for what he announced would be his final speech as Earth's representative. 3 years ago, the coalition demanded our surrender and threatened our destruction. Today, former coalition worlds are our closest partners in building a better galaxy. The council chamber was filled with representatives from species that had once been bitter enemies. They were debating trade agreements instead of planning wars. They were sharing technology instead of hoarding weapons. They were solving problems through cooperation instead of conquest. Humanity asked for nothing more than the right to exist in peace, Kim continued. In return, we've given the galaxy something it had never known, the choice to be free. Years later, when historians studied the war between humanity and the Hegemony Coalition, they struggled to understand how 12 warships had brought an empire to its knees. The answer wasn't found in weapon specifications or tactical manuals. It was found in the simple truth that humans had demonstrated throughout the conflict. Real strength came not from the ability to destroy enemies, but from the wisdom to turn enemies into friends. The coalition had requested war from humanity, expecting to find a weak species that could be easily conquered. What they found instead was a species that fought not for dominance, but for the radical idea that different beings could live together in peace. The annihilation that followed wasn't the destruction of humanity. It was the annihilation of the idea that the strong must rule the weak, that different species must fight each other, and that peace was impossible. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't winning the war. It was making sure that such a war would never be necessary again.